This meeting started. This Interim Joint Committee on Tourism, Small Business, and Information Technology. We're going to start off today. Sasha, would you please call the roll?
Senator Boswell. Senator Funky Fromeyer. Senator Gardler. Senator Harper Angel. Senator Howell. Senator Mills. Senator Storm. Senator Thomas. Senator Wheeler.
Here.
Senator Wilson.
Here.
Representative All.
Here.
Representative Baker.
Here.
Representative Dotson.
Here.
Representative Pfister.
Here.
Representative Frazier Gordon. Representative Freeland.
Present.
Representative Fugit.
Here.
Representative Heath. Representative Kulkarni.
Present.
Representative Lawrence. Representative Maddox.
Here.
Representative Massaroni. Representative McPherson.
Here.
Representative Pollock.
Here.
Representative Roberts. Representative Stalker.
Present.
Representative Tackett Lafferty. Representative Tate. Representative Timoney.
Here.
Representative Truitt. Representative Wesley. Representative White.
Here.
Representative Wilson.
Here.
Representative Witten.
Here.
Co-Chair Wise.
Present.
Co-Chair King.
Present.
Co-Chair Pratt.
Present. We have a quorum, and we're constituted to do business. Do I hear a motion for past minutes from the last meeting? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes. Thank you guys very much. All right, before we get started, does anyone have guests they would like to introduce to the crowd today? I believe Representative White has one.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had the pleasure of meeting one of our new representatives representing Lexington. She's here. She came to meeting with me. Ann Dunworth. She's out of the 75th district, is it? 76th district. But she'll be joining our house here come January, and I'm honored for her to come and sit in with us.
I believe that's Ruth Ann Palumbo 2.0. All right. And also, I'd like to take the privilege of also introducing my guest today, Tony Hampton, who's taking my seat. As you guys know, I decided not to seek re-election. Tony will be taking my spot, so guys, take good care of him. Thank you all very much. All right. We're first going to start off with our first presentation. Oh, good Lord. Bourbon Bills, Kentucky. Please state your name for the record, and please proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and members of the committee. My name is Jack Mazarak, and I'm with the Kentucky Distillers Association. I'd like to introduce the president of the Kentucky Distillers Association, Mr. Eric Gregory.
Please proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me say thanks to this committee for having us here today and for all the work that y'all have done over the last 10 to 15 years for modernizing our alcohol laws to allow our distilleries to grow and become more successful. And most importantly, a lot of changes to the tourism laws that were stuck in Prohibition to allow the Kentucky Bourbon Trail to grow and reach our kind of Napa Valley type potential. And I hope you'll see here that they've really done a lot of growth and changes. And also let me say thank you to Chair Pratt for all your support over the years. We will miss you. And on a personal note, you have been a friend of mine for over 25 years, and I've got the best looking lawn in Midway, Kentucky. Thanks to you. So thank you, sir. So a little bit about the KDA. First of all, y'all know us. We were actually founded in 1880 in Louisville. So if you don't count Prohibition, we're celebrating our 144th anniversary this year. And we are the worldwide voice of bourbon. Now, a lot of people see bourbon as just a drink, and that is true. We make 95% of the world's bourbon, as y'all know, here in Kentucky, and 100% of the bourbon worth drinking here in Kentucky. But we're also part of our history and our heritage. We're part of our communities and have done a lot, we think, to help build our communities, especially over the last 10 to 15 years. We're a big part of the economy. And again, our history goes back over 250 years and is unparalleled in American whiskey. When I started this job in 2008, we had 6 members, and that was all 6 distilleries in the state of Kentucky. We now have 70 distilling members and 53 industry members, and those are people like Independent Stave Company that produces the barrels, Vendome Copper and Brass, and other great supply chain partners that we could not live without. Bourbon has the second highest spinoff factor in the state. So for every bourbon job that's created, 3 more are created down the line. Obviously, the first one is the automobile industry, and we appreciate all their support as well. So those 70 members operate 86 distilling operations in 42 Kentucky counties. So now over a third of all counties in the Commonwealth have a distiller, and a lot of them are small distillers. And again, as we like to say, we're very proud that bourbon is helping to build the Kentucky economy. A few economic impact numbers real quick. We are a $9 billion industry that has tripled in the last 10 years, and we're now generating more jobs, more payroll, more tax revenue, more tourists, and more distilleries in more Kentucky counties than ever before. The state of Kentucky now has a total of 115 licensed distilling companies operated by 95 companies in 40 counties, which is actually 42 counties. And you'll see it's really spread out across the bluegrass. It used to be the majority of the distilleries, all 6 of them, were located in what we call the Amber Triangle of Lexington, Louisville, and Bardstown. And now we literally have distilleries all the way from Paducah and Hickman Fulton down there to Pikeville, to northern Kentucky, and even southern Kentucky, where we have distilleries in Cumberland County, Somerset's getting a big distillery, and others. So it's not just the urban areas that have the concentration of distilleries anymore. It really has spread out across the state. We're also very proud of the jobs that we generate in Kentucky. Distilling is responsible for more than 23,100 jobs, with an annual payroll with salaries, wages, and benefits of $2.2 billion. And we're growing. We're in the middle of a $5.4 billion capital investment campaign. In the next couple of years, we're going to be spending $3.5 billion of that on everything from new distilleries to new aging warehouses to bottling centers, and a lot of money is going to go towards tourism. This is a number actually from late last year, $194 million to expand tourism operations. With some of the recent announcements, I think that's probably going to be closer to $250 million in the next couple of years on tourism. We're also one of the top export industries in Kentucky. We shipped more than $500 million worth of exports in 2022. That's the latest figures we have available, almost all of which was bourbon. And we pay our fair share of taxes. The distilling industry last year generated $358 million in state and local taxes, which, again, thanks to the growth, is $232 million more in taxes than we paid just 15 years ago. And we're also a good source of revenue for the federal government. We pay almost $2 billion in federal alcohol taxes, which is higher than any other state in the country. And as far as taxes and tax revenue, Kentucky has the 3rd highest tax on spirits than all other states in the country. But we appreciate all the work y'all have done to help us reduce that. Now, what we're really here today to talk about is our world-famous Kentucky Bourbon Trail Tour, which the KDA created in 1999 as a way to showcase the art and science behind the craft of making bourbon. And real quick, this year is the 25th anniversary of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, and we've been celebrating that all year. We have a very brief video here we'd like to show you that kind of talks about what we're doing to move the Kentucky Bourbon Trail forward. Thank you, Jack.
It began 25 years ago. A simple idea, really. To showcase the talents of 7 distilleries across Kentucky. Today, the Kentucky Bourbon Trail has grown into a global phenomenon, a destination admired around the world, with 2.5 million visitors every year. And it could only happen here. You see, this isn't a state line. It's the border between the world's best bourbon and everything else. The success of the Bourbon Trail isn't surprising when you meet the people who built it. The people of Kentucky, who bring its story to life every day with their heart, their craftsmanship, and their hospitality. Now that the world has seen what only Kentucky can do with bourbon, they're showing up and asking for more. Today, the trail has 46 distilleries, with more on the way. And on this 25th anniversary, It's time for a new brand experience that is worthy of the bourbon experience that Kentucky has created for our visitors. Our work began a year ago in listening sessions to understand what was important for our distilleries and our visitors. The result is a reimagined Kentucky Bourbon Trail that encourages greater exploration, slowing down, and savoring the moment. We're combining the two trails into one for an experience that's easier to understand and simpler to enjoy. We're unveiling an all-new brand identity that is modern, adventurous, and reflective of the new and elevated offerings at our distilleries. And this summer, we'll be launching an all-new digital experience with the goal of helping you explore and prepare for your trip like never before. And with the ability to build your own bourbon trail based on what's important to you. The time has come to celebrate 25 years with an exciting new brand and a new era of possibilities. Join us in toasting the reimagined Kentucky Bourbon Trail.
Shout out real quick to our partners at Lewis Communications, who's been helping us do that for over a year. And they really did their homework in coming in and not only meeting with our distillers, but also visiting them out in y'all's counties and talking to your local CVBs and others on what we could do to continue to promote and elevate our Kentucky Bourbon Trail experience. And you'll see here again, we've got a lot of new merchandise and things with this very simple yet elegant new logo and promotional campaign for the 25th anniversary. And y'all are the very first people to see this. We had our annual meeting this week, and this is the new insignia for the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. You're going to see this on everything from hats to shopping bags and merchandise, clothing, and things like that. Again, insignias go way back in the history of bourbon, where a lot of bottles had those on them and still do to this day. So we wanted something very rich and again, with the copper tones and everything symbolic of our industry that we could really promote along with our Kentucky Bourbon Trail name. So they mentioned in the video that our new digital experience launched this summer, and that has been centered around a complete brand new website that's making it easier than ever for a bourbon visitor to tour Kentucky. So the main thing that we're focusing on is really to slow down and enjoy all that Kentucky has to offer. Again, when I started, we had a passport program, and with 6 distilleries, you could do it all in one weekend. And if you visited all 6, we sent you a t-shirt, and trust me, people thought that was gold, and they would come back year after year just to get the new t-shirt for that year. Well, with 46 distilleries and soon to be 59, we just approved 13 more to join the trail in January. You can't do it in a long weekend, and we don't want you to. We want you to take your time, relax, visit responsibly, and visit as many Kentucky communities as you can, and then come back for more and spend more money in Kentucky and visit distilleries maybe in the western part of the state or the eastern part of the state. And again, just relax and enjoy everything that Kentucky has to offer. And you heard them say that we combined the 2 trails into one. For the years, we've had the original legacy Kentucky Bourbon Trail, which is the bigger distilleries. And then when the craft distilleries started coming to Kentucky, we all thought they'd want to join the big Bourbon Trail. And they didn't. They about ran away screaming because they said, you know, Woodford gets 1,000 visitors a day. If a craft distillery got 1,000 visitors a month, they wouldn't have time to make their whiskey. So they worked with us to create a craft bourbon trail, which we started in 2012. And that's, you know, it's in 12 years, it's really given them time to kind of catch up with infrastructure, parking, you know, everything from bathrooms to visitor centers to gift shops and everything. And they told us they're ready now to, you know, join the big players. And we created one Kentucky Bourbon Trail, retiring the craft tour. And you can imagine we do a lot of research on the visitors who are coming to Kentucky, and about 50% of them knew that there were 2 trails, and 50% didn't. But 100% of them said, we really don't care there are 2 trails. We're planning our visit based on where we're starting and what's around that. So that's why we've introduced kind of regions to help people start their trip. You know, there's a Northern Kentucky region, a Bluegrass region around Lexington, the Louisville Metro region, all these different things. So you can plan where your home base is going to be, and then we can showcase you all those things that are around places to eat and drink and sleep and shop. And by doing that, we kind of took the old BYOB to a different level. We're now encouraging people to build your own bourbon trail and really make this part of an adventure for them and their friends. And as part of that, we're on a six-figure campaign to produce more content like what you just saw to bring Kentucky a more informed visitor and a more elevated visitor, thank you, Jack, elevated visitor to really help our economy. So again, slowing down, this is yours to explore. You see on the right there, know your regions and have a smart way to plan. 46 distilleries on one trail. The middle one shows that each distillery gets their own page that you can click on and see all the things to do there. And then trail tips to know before you go. The days of coming to Kentucky and immediately going to a distillery and getting a tour are gone. It's more like Napa Valley now, where you have to plan to come here because some distilleries are booked months in advance. The craft distilleries you can usually get in pretty quickly, but even some craft distilleries have gone to reservation only just because there is so much of a demand for tourists these days. And COVID really taught us a lesson in that before COVID, you might have 40 people on your tour. And after COVID, people wanted smaller tours, more intimate tours, that you can really make it more of a personal experience. So most tours these days have 12 to 15 people on them, and maybe 20 if you want, but we're always trying to keep it small to give it a more intimate experience for the visitor. Again, you see here, explore and build your own Kentucky Bourbon Trail experience. And on the right is an example of the Jim Beam Distillery over in Claremont and Bullitt County. And so that's kind of what the visitors will see when they're planning their trip. We had another video today that was really short, but we had some technical difficulties. I'll just say that it was going to be part, or is part of some of the new digital assets we're rolling out on social media to, again, entice people to come here. And here's another one that isn't a video, but that's the Master Distiller at Woodford Reserve, Elizabeth McCall, who's part of the next generation of Master Distillers here in Kentucky. She does a fantastic job. And one of her lines has always been to, don't let your dreams stay in the bottle. Come here and visit the Kentucky Bourbon Trail and see it first at hand. Now, from an economic impact of bourbon tourism, our distilleries hosted over 2.5 million experiences in 2023. That's a 14% increase over the previous year and a 286% increase in the past 10 years. And while it's tough to calculate, bourbon tourism does have a positive impact on the Kentucky economy, generating hundreds of millions of dollars and a direct boost to the hospitality industry. We're actually working on a more in-depth study to nail some of those figures down, which we hope to have sometime next year. When you're looking, though, at what the visitor profile is for the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, it's a home run demographic for Kentucky and your local communities. In total, a group will spend about $600 to $1,400 on dining, entertainment, lodging, and transportation during their trip. And 76% of all visitors are coming outside of Kentucky. And I probably imagine the other 24% are people in Kentucky hosting people from outside Kentucky to come here. We get visitors from all 50 states and dozens of countries. 62% of them have a household income above $100,000, and more than half of those have a household income above $130,000. So again, we're attracting more of that Napa Valley type demographic to come here to Kentucky. The male-female split is about 60-40, but what we found is more of the women do the actual planning for the trips. And so we're getting more women coming to Kentucky to experience bourbon and all of our hospitality. They stay in our hotels and rest in Airbnbs and such for 3 to 5 days, 84% of them, and 74% are interested in the history and culture of bourbon. And y'all are all politicians, and you just had an election. It's about name ID, right? And approval rating. Well, 97% of people who have visited would recommend a distillery tour to their families and friends. I'll take that. That's a winning number. 96% would like to visit another distillery, and incredibly, 91% discovered a new brand or product during their visit to Kentucky. So just like the passport was originally brought forth to get people to visit all the distilleries, some of which they may not have known about, it's great to see our craft distilleries especially benefiting from these visitors coming to see the big distilleries, because people are discovering new brands that they've never seen or tasted before. And now they can go back home to their state and their local liquor stores or restaurants and say, hey, I really like that James E. Pepper I found in Kentucky. I'd like to have it here. Can you carry it here so I can buy it here? And again, let me just spend a minute to say, once again, thank you so much. None of this could be possible without the leadership and support of this General Assembly. most of our laws were stuck in Prohibition. Prohibition ended over 80 years ago, but we still had laws on the books that kept us from realizing this potential. And it's been over 24 bills passed just in the last 10 years. And a couple of the ones here that were really important that helped. First of all, 2016 Senate Bill 11 by Senator John Schickel, that really broke things wide open. It's hard to believe that less than 10 years ago, you could not buy a cocktail at a distillery. You could go to a winery and get a glass of wine. You could go to a brewery and get a pint, but you could go to a distillery and just get a very small taste. You couldn't even buy a cocktail or even let us teach you how to make a cocktail. That allowed that to happen. And now you see high-class bars, world-class restaurants popping up at distilleries. And these aren't bars in the sense that you're going to sit there and drink all day. These are bars in the sense that we can come in and teach you how to make the world's best old-fashioned or the world's best, heaven help me, mint julep. And you can learn all that. You can go to the gift shop, get the ingredients, again, take them back home and teach your friends and family all that you saw in Kentucky. Obviously, again, the barrel tax phase out was big. Direct-to-consumer shipping, that's something that we're still working with other states to become reciprocal. You can send wine to 47 states. You can only ship bourbon or whiskey or spirits to about a dozen, but that number is growing. And then in 2022, private barrel selections, exclusive bottles, satellite tasting rooms, and fairs and festivals. This is something that really has helped as well. When we took a trip to Scotland to go over their Scotch whiskey trail, at the end of their tours, they would hold up a bottle and say, you can only buy this bottle here. And we all walked up with our credit cards and said, I want one or two of those. We couldn't do that in Kentucky. But thanks to all of our work with our wholesale and retail partners, they allowed us to do that, along again with y'all's support in passing that. And now you have people coming to distilleries every week, every month, just to get that bottle that's only made there and sold there. And again, you saw on that previous slide, we're very proud of the work that we've been doing with Ignition Interlocks in Kentucky for the past 10 years. And I think, Jack, we've even got legislation to help strengthen that program coming up next session. We recently just announced a new coalition that we're working with with most of the colleges and universities in the state. The KDA has raised almost $1 million from our distilleries and our partners to standardize responsibility education at all colleges and universities throughout Kentucky. UK and U of L and the bigger institutions have money and resources they can put to this, but a lot of the smaller colleges and universities don't, and it may just be an hour program during their orientation. This will help them get on a level playing field with other bigger colleges, universities, and make it a year-round program and help our students and our younger people make the right choices and understand the dangers of drinking and driving and underage drinking and binge drinking and so on. And real quick to end, we recently just joined the World Spirits Alliance. This is a very prestigious group based in Geneva that is working on everything from tariffs and trade to dietary guidelines and you name it. As you can see, almost all of the leading world trade associations for alcohol are part of this, and many of our historic brands that we have here in Kentucky. It was very nice to see when we came there this past summer for the first time. Everybody came up to us and said, you got to teach us how you guys are doing that bourbon trail there because you're the blueprint for everybody on tourism to follow. We've helped the Irish Whiskey Association develop the Irish Whiskey Trail. We've helped Spirits Canada, who was in a couple weeks ago. They wanted to develop a Canadian Whiskey Trail. We tried to help the Caribbean Rum Association create a rum trail. They wouldn't have us down to help with that. And they finally realized that that may not work because you have to go to different islands to do it. So that was going to be some technical difficulties as well. But again, it was great to see people around the world realize the impact that Kentucky, thanks to y'all's leadership, has had on bourbon tourism, and we're seen as the gold standard. And again, everything we do at the KDA is with one goal in mind, to keep Kentucky the one true and authentic home for bourbon. Because there's 3,000 distilleries now in all 50 states, and they're gunning for us. And they want what we have here in Kentucky because they know that bourbon, again, is not just a drink. It's jobs and investment in tourism. And if one of them becomes the next Maker's Mark or something like that, suddenly that 95% starts to slip. And we can't afford to let that happen. It means too much to us as an industry and too much to the Commonwealth in terms of image, identity, and jobs and taxes and so on. So we always like to end our presentations to say if you're enjoying bourbon, please enjoy bourbon like a true Kentuckian, responsibly and in moderation. And with that, Mr. Chairman, That's all we have for you today, but we are happy to answer any questions that y'all might have.
Thank you. Great presentation. Actually, we do have some questions. Representative All.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If y'all want to send me down to Jamaica, I'll figure that out. Appreciate the presentation. I want to get like an overall industry update on white oak. I know that Congress passed the White Oak Resiliency Act. It was a bipartisan piece of legislation. It's something that's very important to this industry and the growth. And we're in the middle of this huge bourbon boom, and we got to keep it up. So, do you have any updates on stats, where we are, how we looking? Do we need to do anything? Is it at the state level? All things white oak. Let me know.
That's a great question. The answer is yes. We are doing everything we can to increase the sustainability of white oak, because without oak, we don't have a product. The University of Kentucky has really been leading the way in a white oak initiative that's got partners from all around the country working on this, especially our friends in the cooperage industry. And Maker's Mark, in fact, actually led the way to completely identify the entire genome of the white oak species. So our professors and experts can go with that and look and see if they can create a more resilient tree, maybe a faster growing tree, because it takes 80 years to grow a stave tree. And we've done forecasts on projections, and in about 40 to 45 years, we may see, some lowering of white oak. And I will say that our distilleries also have been doing a lot of reforestation projects. Is that how I'm going to say it? Reforestation. Gosh, thank you. Angel's Envy, for instance, every September, if you post a video of you drinking Angel's Envy, they'll plant a tree, and they're planting 20,000 trees a year. So anything we can do to increase the sustainability of white oak, we're working on. If anybody has ideas or anything, we're all open. And yes, we thank our congressman and our congressional delegation for working on that, because it is too important to our industry.
Next, we have Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon.
Hey,
Hope you all are doing well. I have asked the following question to several distillers individually, and to date, no one's been able to answer the question. So with the association here today, hopefully you can shed some light. So have any studies been done to what happens when we hit consumer saturation on all of the distilled spirits that are currently being provided for, construction built for, and in the early stages of being stored? But when it's all ready for consumption, what studies are we doing on what is that saturation rate, and what do we do when that happens?
That's a very good question. And we have been growing at an incredible rate the last 10 years especially. And the majority of that growth is all due to the global market. And we barely scratch the surface of the global market. If India, 1% of India started drinking bourbon, we wouldn't have any left in the state of Kentucky. So there are places outside of Kentucky, the Asian markets, Russia, again, India, other countries where Scotch is the leader. And they have a 600-year head start on us. I mean, we're still the new kid around the block. So a lot of the production you see today is built for that. Now, that also brings up a very interesting question as well on tariffs. We're very worried about what tariffs could do to our industry. We've been caught up in the steel and aluminum tariffs now for several years, and those are scheduled to come back in March of next year at double the rate, 50%. And that's to the EU. And if those come back at 50%, it will cripple our exports industries. And at that point, we've never had that problem before, but I cringe to think what could happen with more whiskey from a domestic standpoint that may hurt our small craft distilleries more than ever. So that's why we're really working hard on the issue. One other reason that we joined the World Spirits Alliance to try to work with our whiskey partners around the world to get back to zero tariffs that we were before, and also to, again, increase our presence globally. We're very fortunate that, for instance, Jack Daniels, which is our friends south of Tennessee, great Kentucky company, Brown-Forman, they're in a lot of global networks and global places that we're not. But they've kind of paved the way for us where we can follow in with them and increase our identity and our sales overseas. So from a growth standpoint and aging barrel standpoint, I'd say that we've still got a lot of years still left to come. And I am not an expert forecaster on that, but I've always kind of punted to our distillery experts. They have people in their companies who have more data at their hands than I will ever see, and they are looking at bourbon 10 and 12 years out and building and investing billions of dollars worth in their facilities. So just remember, the blessing and curse of bourbon is you can't make it overnight. And so the bourbon that's being laid down today is not going to be available until 2030 or beyond. So, that's where a lot of the growth comes into.
It's interesting that you say the individual distillers have the data more than the association, but I've still to date have not had a single distiller that says we do not. I don't know when that'll happen. I don't know what those numbers
That's
are.
interesting.
Don't know how many years down the road that
We'll
is.
go back and ask them that question. If they can meet with you, we'll certainly encourage that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
You're welcome. Representative Carney.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for presenting to us today on all the way our bourbon industry is thriving. I had kind of a follow-up question. It was about the shipping to the world slide that you had, and part of it was tariffs, which is what you have answered. My secondary question with relation to the exports, what has been historically the biggest export market, and has that shifted over time, or do you anticipate that shifting in the future?
That's a great question, and yes, it has shifted because of tariffs. So the EU pre-Brexit was the biggest export market with over half of all exports going there. And within the EU, the United Kingdom was our biggest export market. When the tariffs hit in 2018, we lost 48% of our exports to the United Kingdom. And that was at 25%. And then post-Brexit, we've lost a third of our exports to the EU. And that's, again, with tariffs coming back. They've been suspended for about a year. And the biggest concern of that is today's consumer is a younger consumer, and they're looking for authenticity. And you can't get anything more authentic, we think, than bourbon. It's all natural. You can't add anything to it. You can come to Kentucky and literally dip your hands in the mash tub and taste it. If they go into their restaurant or their favorite package store or a bar and see that the bourbon that they have been drinking is now 25% more than what they were drinking, which is most likely Scotch, do they go back to drinking Scotch? And then we've lost them for a year or 2 years or perhaps a generation. And that's a big fear that we have. We've kind of clawed our way back the last couple of years to get above 500 million again. We had lost about $270 million in exports during the tariffs. So again, that we're extremely anxious about that. In the meantime, the Asian markets have really picked up. Japan has always been a great partner of ours and kind of carried the bourbon industry through the lull in the 70s and 80s. Australia is a big bourbon market. They're very they really like our RTDs, the ready-to-drink cocktails. We ship a lot of bourbon down there in tankers, and then they make them into a bourbon and cola or something like that. And then Canada is still a big bourbon export market. And Mexico has been, but tequila, if you've been watching anything, every celebrity has a tequila brand right now. Tequila is hot. And it is actually outselling vodka right now. More American consumers spent more money on tequila last year than they did whiskey, which is something that, again, is that a trend or is it a fad because of all the celebrity endorsements and things? We keep watch on that pretty closely.
Quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman. So is that a way that you're sort of insulating or anticipating being able to insulate yourself in solidifying these markets and making sure they're...
I'm sorry,
sorry. Are these markets that you've mentioned, Japan, Australia, Canada, is it possible to insulate yourselves from any of the sort of tariffs, anything that we're going to see? Is that the plan, or that was kind of what I was getting at?
As much as possible. When the tariffs first hit, the companies tried to absorb as much of that as they possibly could. And you probably heard me say that we were cautiously optimistic for several years that it was going to be a short-term problem. But after a few years, it's hard for any company to keep absorbing a 25% tariff. If that goes to 50%, I don't know many companies that can absorb a 50% tariff. So yes, we are always exploring other countries and other free trade agreements. We've been talking a lot more to India. The tariff on American whiskey in India is 150%. And Scotch has a stranglehold on India. But we've been working with Congressman Barr and some others on trying to do maybe a 3-year pilot program to suspend tariffs there for a couple of years. That's not long, really, to get into a market and convince people not to drink other whiskeys, but it would be an opening for us. So if there are tariffs on other countries that we would have to shy away from or be forced out of, that maybe we can do something like that again could help us offset that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Representative Timoney.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for your presentation today and your excellent leadership in this industry. You know, it's definitely soaring because of your efforts. Quick question about the bottles that we are using to put our bourbon in. Rumor is that they're not produced in Kentucky, and have we done a study about bringing that industry to Kentucky? Because I know there's probably a region in Kentucky that could benefit from an industry like that where they can join the party, so to speak.
Boy, you have hit upon my white whale. Yes, and I'll let Jack talk about that more. For years, I've been working with the cabinet trying to get a glass manufacturer to Kentucky. It was the missing component because we had the cooperages here, the stave mills, the copper, the steel makers. We did not have glass. And I could never figure out why a glass manufacturer just wouldn't come here. And I kept hearing it was all about the sand and things like that and everything. But now you're starting to see that happen. So, Jack, you want to talk about OI Glass that's coming to Kentucky?
Absolutely. Thank you. And that is a great question. And I think many of us were thrilled to see the announcement about 1.5 years, 2 years ago of OI Glass coming to the Bowling Green area, to Warren County. That was the first glass manufacturer to make the commitment to come to the Commonwealth and create jobs and investment. And so that groundbreaking has taken place. They're investing a lot of money, and we're thrilled to see them continue to grow. And of course, we at the Kentucky Distillers Association also have a number of companies that are partner members that also produce glass, and we're always encouraging them to find ways to create jobs and investment here too.
And it really became more apparent that we needed it during COVID and all the supply chain issues we had. We had distillers saying, I've got pallets of glass sitting on a port in Los Angeles. I just can't get it here. And so they were stocking up as much as they possibly could. And there has even been some kind of tariffs involved in the glass industry in the past year that we've been watching out for. But the answer to the question is, like Jack said, whatever we can do to help bring a glass company or more glass companies to Kentucky, we're for.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. As you know, this also impacts my home county. We got 2 distillers starting right now in Scott County. So look forward to growth. Thank you guys for your presentation. And correct me if I'm wrong, I've always heard that 49 cents out of every dollar spent goes to taxes. Is that still true?
It's about 60 cents.
Wow.
Yes, 60
so
cents.
It's a big economic driver in our area.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, we got one more question.
Sure.
Formar.
I didn't get my hand up fast enough. So many efforts coordinated with our tourism cabinet, and there was a new Kentucky home announced. What is the bourbon industry doing in coordination with the tourism cabinet?
We work with the tourism cabinet. More importantly, we work with the local CVBs, and I'm so proud that Julie Kirkpatrick is here today, and Julie can talk about the fantastic program they have up there called the Beeline. And we were able to get some ARPA funds even to work with our local CVBs to help on a lot of the promotional efforts of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail rebranding effort. So we have a complete Kentucky Bourbon Trail advisory group that contains a lot of those local CVBs, and we work hand in hand with them in our distilleries to answer questions, to see what's coming on the horizon, to promote our distilleries, and again, promote everything around the distilleries. So for instance, in our new website, we're actually going to be encouraging people to take a bourbon break. If you've been here 3 or 4 days and you're 51% corn to death, go visit a state park, go visit a restaurant, go visit some shops in these communities, and we'll have that on our website so people can see that and really get out in the communities and see everything that they have to offer.
And if I may just add to that, anecdotally, when we're bringing literally millions of people into the state, to different parts of the state, increasingly, a certain percentage of those people are going to fall in love with Kentucky. We think of the quote from Governor Chandler, who said, most every Kentuckian I met was trying to get back home if they were out of state. And we understand that by showcasing the state through our distilleries and the communities that they're in, that's going to help whether it's a family decide to move here, folks decide to retire here, or young people decide to buy their first forever home here.
Yeah, we used to have a thing called the Bourbon Affair, which was a week-long bourbon fantasy camp, and was possibly one of the coolest things that we'd ever done. COVID unfortunately killed it, but you would not believe the number of people from out of state who came here each year for that who now moved here because they fell in love with Kentucky. And so I was talking to Representative Pollock about that as well. Our goal would be come to Kentucky, see everything that's beautiful here, see our courtesy and our hospitality and just the great people here and our history and culture, and say, you know, that's a place I'd like to move to someday. That would be a great accomplishment for us.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Very informative.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Next, we have Senator Shelley Funky Fromeyer, the update on America's 250th celebration in Northern Kentucky. Make sure your mic is pulled up close to you. Make sure the light is green. Please introduce yourself for the record, and please proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. I am Julie Kirkpatrick. I am President and CEO of Northern Kentucky Tourism. We call ourselves Meet NKY. And today I am delighted to bring one of the co-chairs of America's River Routes, an exciting new event in our region, Mr. Tim Fogarty, here today.
First of all, thank you for having us. We look forward to the conversation. As mentioned, my name is Tim Fogarty. I'm a retired, let's call it unemployed businessman living in Covington, Kentucky, and made the mistake of raising my hand when they said we need volunteers to organize this festival to celebrate the nation's 250th. I find myself today as a co-chair in trying to put this incredible event together. Again, thank you for having us.
And I think everyone knows our wonderful District 24 Senator, Madam Fromeyer.
Well, thank you. And is it appropriate that I can say, and I have a girl crush on Julie Kirkpatrick. She organized a beeline tour for my family years back, and I am Senator Shelley Funky Fromeyer from District 24. And I get to represent this little corner of Kenton County in Covington, and as well as all of Campbell, Pendleton, and Bracken. And we do have some very special bourbon distilleries in that area that, thanks to Julie Kirkpatrick, are on the beeline and have really helped stimulate our economy in Augusta and in Maysville as well, and just created a very special environment. But I did ask them to be here today because there are fantastic things happening throughout our state. And along the Ohio River, I think sometimes Kentucky doesn't claim the treasure of the Ohio River. And this is an opportunity to claim that treasure. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I'm very excited to tell you that the president-elect a year ago talked about America's 250th birthday, and his administration's vision for this event is that there will be multitudes of events all over the United States of America starting next year on Memorial Day and running all the way through July 4th, 2026. This event, America's River Routes, has been in planning for, I want to say, almost 2 years at this point. I could say 20 years. That would be the last time that Tall Stacks was held in our region. But this is an elevation of a former event that takes into account the Ohio River's importance today in commerce and recreation. It also takes into account the historical significance of the Ohio River. I think my good friends from the Kentucky Distillers Association would admit that the river was critical to moving bourbon down to New Orleans, and that's where it became bourbon. And this is an event that really celebrates the future of our country and the waterways and these things that are so critical and important to us. So America's River Routes is a 4-day event that will be held in October 2025, October 8th through 10th, on the banks of the Ohio River between Cincinnati and Kentucky. We are so lucky to be conjoined in our region. I always say we have the best side of the river because we have the best airport in the Commonwealth. But this event will celebrate a lot of things. It will celebrate how Kentucky was settled. Kentucky was settled through our river, through the Ohio River. It will promote our unique river history. It will be a celebration of music, culture, cuisine, and we want it to be a kickoff to America's 250th. There is a fancy name for the 250th. I think it's sescentennial, and I cannot say it well, so I'm just going to call it America's 250th. I would also say that the location of this event is literally a mile away from where Vice President President-elect J.D. Vance currently lives. And I say currently because I think he's going to have a new address in about 90 days. So America's River Roots, as we said, is about bringing new visitors to our region to see this asset that we have, the Ohio River. It is about the economic impact, of course, that happens in the event, but it's also a celebration of the industry that occurs on our Ohio River, the things that are moved along the river, the history of the river. And we ultimately think it is a great talent attraction piece as well to introduce a lot of visitors to our Kentucky culture. One of the pillars of America River Roots is music. Music is so fundamental to river culture. Things from gospel, folk, blues, all of this came along with the river culture. We will be having national acts as well as emerging acts, 8 stages along the Ohio and Kentucky River. They will be free stages. One of the stages will be a paid stage, as well as a gospel revival. And Cincinnati last year opened up a Black Music Walk of Fame, and that will also be included as the event. Tim, you want to talk a little bit about one of the pillars of cuisine?
Yeah, there are 3 pillars here. One music, one cuisine, and one culture. The cuisine is going to feature. This is not going to be a hot dog and cans of beer kind of festival. There will be celebrity chefs from around the region. There will be themed meals prepared on the steamboats that are going to participate in this. So we're trying to. We chose October of 25. And as you historians know, the nation's birth isn't until 26. We wanted to be one of the first, if not the first in the nation, so we could set the bar for this. We are desperately trying to attract as much attention to the region as possible. And one way to do this is through this festival. The next pillar would be culture. As part of our cultural pillar, we are bringing 9 paddle wheelers back to the region. I don't know if any of you were familiar with the Tall Stack events that went on in the late 1900s, early 2000s, but 1 million visitors paid visit to the Kentucky, southwestern Ohio region, and that is one of the key aspects of this. In addition to that, we'll have River City pavilions that are represented from cities from Pittsburgh to New Orleans. Freedom Speaker Series across the river in Cincinnati to bring in nationally known speakers to talk about the 250-year history of not only the nation, but the Ohio River Valley. One of the cultural aspects of this that's of importance to this group, as we try to attract visitors to the region for this event, we will then try to get them to add on to their stay through visits to Keeneland, the Bourbon Trail, and other historical sites around the region. Next slide, please. The layout of the festival at this point in time is as you can see, it's both sides of the river. We're in the process of having an economic impact study done by Northern Kentucky University. The population in southwestern Ohio is greater than it is in Northern Kentucky. However, the sides of the river are just as long in either state. A recent artistic event, Blank, which you may or may not have heard of, in Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati, attracted roughly 2 million people to the region. And in their 2022 event, the reported economic impact was $249.3 million. This is an enormous revenue generator. This will be an enormous tax generator. And again, from our perspective, it's one of attention for the region. Our region recently, site selector consulting firm looked at our MSA compared to 9 other MSAs in the Midwest. Our MSA, as it pertains to educated workforce, ranked 10 out of 10. We need events like this to shine a light on our region. We need an event like this to attract talent to our region, and we need events like this to retain talent in our region. If you look at the Ohio River from Covington, in a 100-mile radius, there are hundreds of thousands of college graduates studying in our region. We need to attract and retain more of those students to promote higher paying jobs for the region. Thus far, our Kentucky partners, I won't bore you with the list, but each day this list gets longer as more and more people recognize what this means to the region financially as well as culturally.
So I'm going to take it over. First of all, I want to say that we are lucky enough right now in Covington to be hosting the entire Kentucky tourism industry for their annual meeting. So I have tourism directors from all of your districts up in Covington right now. So we are talking about how our river cities join in and participate, everything from Ashland to Paducah and every city in between that can come up and join in this River Roots effort. We have some very specific asks for our legislative friends. Number one is we would respectfully request that the Kentucky 250 Planning Commission designate America River Roots as an official Kentucky 250 event, and that the Kentucky legislature would endorse this designation. Second, you did so much work in the last legislative session appropriating $2.5 million for Kentucky's 250th anniversary. We would make a request of that funding. I understand it's going through the Kentucky Historical Society, the Department of Tourism, Arts, and Heritage. We would like an endorsement by the legislature for $500,000 to come to support this event. This would match up with commitments that Ohio has made of $1 million. We feel that that is reasonable for Kentucky's investiture in this event. And finally, we'd like to invite you to come up to Northern Kentucky and enjoy this event with us. Obviously, the event is going to be a big draw, but we'd invite you to the Newport Aquarium that celebrated its 25th anniversary this year, the Ark Encounter and Creation Museum that continue to bring millions of visitors, and of course, all of the great attributes that we celebrate in Northern Kentucky. And I think that is all that we have to report to you today. We wanted to get us back on schedule, and we were happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I do not see any questions, but thank you all very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
All right, next we have introduction to the Kentucky-Ohio River Regional Recreation Authority and proposed amendments. Please come forward. Please state your name for the record. Make sure your mic's on, and please proceed. I don't think your mic's on, sir. The green light.
My name is David Wicks, and I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. Live on the banks of Harrods Creek near the Ohio River, and I am vice chair of the Ohio River Way and chair of the River City Paddle Sports program there at Louisville Waterfront Park. I'm here to talk about the Kentucky-Ohio River Regional Recreation Authority that was passed last year. Representative Fleming, unfortunately, has another meeting today, so he cannot be here. But it was passed last session, and between then and now, all 25 counties have passed a resolution supporting their participation in the Kentucky-Ohio River Regional Recreation Authority. Basically, it was modeled after the Kentucky Mountain Regional Recreation Authority that's been in existence for several years. And as you see, we go all the way from Ashland on down to the Mississippi River. You know, the purpose of the authority is to really think about the Ohio River as a recreational and tourist venue. As you've heard in the past two presentations, certainly the Ohio River is a defining feature for Kentucky. And it's amazing to me, I worked for many years in education, and it's amazing to me the lack of knowledge, the geographic lack of knowledge of many of our students, and even our community. You know, when I look at Louisville, we've been disconnected from the river. And as we go up and down the river, it's true. We have not taken full advantage of it. But what I'm looking for is the authority to really be a centralizing entity that could approach the problem regionally. So often many of the federal grants are regionally based, and so we're interested in increasing access. We're interested in increasing safety. We're interested in working with the Army Corps to facilitate some of the long-term projects that they have on the Ohio River, and that is best done regionally instead of individually. We met yesterday, or the authority had its first meeting yesterday at KACO, at the annual counties conference, and all 25 counties were there. It was hosted by the Department of Local Government, and the legislation created 6 county judges to be on the board, along with an appointee of the Tourism and Arts and Heritage Cabinet, the Department of Local Government, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Then there's 2 other non-voting members. Mr. Fleming is the representative of the House, and the Senate is still has not been identified. Eventually, just as the Mountain Authority, we are interested in seeking a executive director as well as support services for the authority. In essence, the structure of it is that it's part of the Kentucky Department of Local Government, which makes sense because they do the land and water conservation funds. They also do the recreational trails program. They also coordinate for sure the Mountain Authority. So it just sort of makes sense that it's all together there. The authority will meet 4 times a year, and until we have secured funds for a director, it'll be staffed by the Department of Local Government. And we do have several philanthropic opportunities that will provide a director in the early stages of this. It really is about boosting recreation economies. You know, when we start to think about our river towns from Ashland to Maysville to Augusta and on down to Paducah, there's challenges. And so tourism is one of those answers. I always like to say, though, it's not only about tourism, it is about quality of life. And as we have people fishing and hanging out by the river and enjoying the river, it really brings a sense of calm and a sense of peace to those individuals. We also think that the river is a connecting river, so it does connect all of us from up and down the river. It connects Paducah with Owensboro and up here to Louisville. But when we look at the money, the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife says it's about $5.9 billion annually. Nationally, outdoor recreation is right about $500 billion, 563.7. In the Great Lakes, which is one of the, I love the Great Lakes, but they're looking at, since their reinvestigation of recreation, they're looking at about $2.5 billion annually of recreation along the river. Elsewhere, as we try to think through this process on the river, as I said, I'm with the Ohio River Way, which is a National Park Service initiative that works with Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. And in Ohio, just Governor DeWine put in $152 million to 17 river towns. Portsmouth, Ohio, is getting $30 million. Higginsport, which is a small town, $6 million for building new parks. The same thing goes on really in Pennsylvania. I'm more familiar with Indiana. In Indiana, across from Louisville, it's almost $50 million is going right next to the Falls of the Ohio to build a new Origin Park and then to build a bicycle walking trail up to Indianapolis. That's all been approved. That's in construction. And so we're just interested in making sure Kentucky gets several of those federal dollars spent here. The Ohio River Congressional Caucus, which is a federal deal, there's two co-chairs, Ms. Houchins from Southern Indiana and Mr. McGarvey from Louisville, and they're looking right now at a 17-state initiative for ecological restoration that's being supported by Orsenco and by the Army Corps. We had a wonderful meeting just this past week in Pittsburgh, and that's slowly moving down the pike because, water quality is essential for outdoor recreation and for fishing. As I mentioned, I'm with the Ohio River Way, and we have a nice little brochure right here. It's sort of a guide to the Ohio River Way that is funded by tourism organizations up and down the river on either side to promote it. One interesting piece is that just this past week, working with the National Park Service, by the way, they've given us 2 full-time staff for the Ohio River Way to help us apply for a national designation as a national water trail. And so there's 32 in the United States right now, and the Ohio River would be the largest river. And it's a challenge in many ways, but working with the barge industry, working with the Corps, working with the Coast Guard, the river is a safe place for recreation. As we look up and down, Cincinnati, for an example, has the largest paddle sport event in the United States on the Ohio River called Paddle Fest. There in Louisville, we have the Hike, Bike, and Paddle that brings thousands of people out on the river. And so it's just our chance to bring those counties together to really think about a regional approach. And that's what KORRRA does. And so yesterday they approved their charter and they elected their chair, Judge McNeil from Mason County and Judge Moore from Boone County will be chair and vice chair of the event or of the initiative, and off we go. So it's just a brand new initiative. And just like to end with this notion of this is what we really do, is to help people find adventure, to inspire care for the land and water, and to boost the economies of the Ohio River community. I spent my life in historical education and environmental education, and the river is central to, our perception of Kentucky, and we just want to celebrate it more. And I would be open for any questions, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. We do have a question from Senator Frankie Frohmeyer.
You did such a great job hosting us in Maysville in recognizing where this fits in from a tourism perspective. What is the interaction with the Army Corps of Engineers, perhaps to give more access to ordinary people that might want to drop their ordinary kayak in at an ordinary spot that they access from the river?
We did have a wonderful conference. We have an annual summit. We probably had about 300 people up in Maysville, and you did a wonderful job. And I do believe there's a huge connection between, outdoor recreation and wellness. It's really about physical activity and a sense of well-being. And so it's there. With the Army Corps of Engineers 2 years ago, working with Orsenco and the Ohio River Basin Alliance, the Army Corps of Engineers did what they call a recreation gap analysis. The federal standard for boat access to water bodies is every 6 miles. And so the Army Corps studied our river and came up with our sections. Trimble County has the largest section that doesn't have access every 6 miles, but there's sections up and down. One of the pieces we're working with the Army Corps on now is an expanded recreation gap analysis where they will visit each one of these sites, because many of these sites were put in by the Army Corps and transferred to local government. So a good example is West Point, Kentucky, right there by Fort Knox. About 45 years ago, they built a beautiful boat ramp, and unfortunately, West Point, if you know much about West Point, lost its school, it doesn't have a restaurant anymore, and doesn't have the funds to maintain it. And Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, through our work, finally got back down there and fixed it up. So the Army Corps is going to do an analysis of all of the boat ramps as well as the bike trails to see if there is a way of connecting some of these trails. As we look at recreational trails, if it's under 10 miles, it's a local trail. If it's 10 to 25 miles, it's a regional trail. As soon as you go above 100 miles, it's a national trail. And that's our intent, is to make this a national trail that will attract people from all over the place. The final thing that the Corps is also going to look at doing is to assemble all of the proposed projects up and down the river, because the Corps regulates the river, and all of these projects, and if you talk to county judges, the pain in the neck of going through the Corps requirements is a challenge, and they're good. It's nice to have the science behind it. But with this initiative, they will look at all of the projects up and down and be front-loaded that information. And so we hope that it really streamlines the process tremendously. It is working with both the Huntington District and the Louisville District. And so they're very supportive of us. We were at a conference, as I mentioned, last week in Pittsburgh with the Corps, and they're just one of our huge sponsors.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no more questions, I appreciate your presentation, sir. Thank you very much, and good luck as we move forward with this. Before we adjourn today, I do want to bring attention to our staff here, which is very helpful. They keep me on task, Kim, and also Senator Wise, which is really a challenge. Christine Dieter, Austin Johnson, Matissa Robinson, would you guys stand up, please? These are analysts. Thank you, guys. But the real workhorses here that really have to keep me and the rest of us in line is Sasha to my right and Alan and Janine Corey to my left. They're the ones who really have the hard job of trying to keep us in line. So thank you guys for everything y'all do. I want to thank the members of the committee. This is the last committee I'll ever chair. Appreciate all you putting up with me, especially the members of the Small Business Information and Technology. Thank you guys for everything over the years. At this